Hi everybody, I was just going through this old video that, well, I say old, I made it earlier this year, and I was covering deagle.com, which is quite a strange site really, because, you know, it has a whole, it lists 183 countries on its site, and it's covering a period during 2017, the year 2017, and it gives for every country the same list. So, you know, this is Britain, and it tells you what the population of Britain in 2017 was 66 million, our gross domestic product, you know, what our military budget is, and, you know, all that kind of thing. And then lower down it goes through all our military equipment, how many fighter jets we have and what kind, and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, but it also gives a forecast for 2025, and it does this for every country. And so for most of the countries, the population is going down quite drastically. So, you know, for when it comes to Britain, the population's going to drop to 15 million, apparently, according to deagle.com's forecast. By 2025, Britain's population will be 15 million. And the idea is that, you know, 51 million people are just going to emigrate. They're going to leave Britain. And, you know, you look at countries like the United States that in 2017, apparently, according to deagle.com, had a population of like 350 million. Well, their population by 2025 is going to drop to 150 million, you see. 250 million are going to leave the United States. So, you know, it was all very suspicious. And then just recently I decided to check on deagle.com again, and oh, you know, what do I find? It's like the whole site's changed now. I mean, it's still from 2017 because they've not updated the year, but you know, there's no forecast. They've taken away the 2025 forecast. And I was thinking, I wonder why they've done that. And then, of course, I realised that, I see, they're behaving responsibly because of everything that's going on now with this COVID-19 stuff and all these conspiracy theories and everything that are coming out. That deagle.com have taken away their forecast because it was feeding into these conspiracy theories, and, you know, especially stuff about this vaccine, you know, because, you know, people have started picking up on scientific studies and things, and articles like this that were in Time magazine in 2017, how gene editing could ruin human evolution, written by Jim Kuzabek, author of Modern Prometheus, Editing the Human Genome with CRISPR-Cas9. Well, you see, CRISPR is what AstraZeneca is using, and so many other pharmaceuticals that are developing these new COVID-19 gene editing biotechnology vaccines. And so people have started saying, you know, that the vaccine is just a cover for Agenda 21 and depopulation and everything. So, of course, deagle.com don't want to alarm people and to be supporting these wild conspiracy theories. And, you know, even though, you know, there are doctors like this guy, you know, Dr. Mike Yeadon, who, all right, he's a top professional. He's worked in biotech, biopharma, studies and stuff like that. You know, he had his own company studying such things. He is an expert, but he is the wrong type of expert, you know, because he isn't an expert that's standing with the government and the World Health Organization. And, you know, he's saying, oh, you know, these vaccines, they're dangerous, and, you know, and all right, yeah, Bill Gates has come out and stated that, you know, if you're vaccinating billions of people with an experimental vaccine, then Big Pharma, the doctors, the people giving the vaccines, the government, they all need to be non-liable, you see. Because, of course, with an experimental vaccine, hundreds of thousands of people out of millions of people being vaccinated, hundreds of thousands of people are going to develop adverse impacts of that. You know, thousands may die even. And, you know, you can't have all these people suddenly suing Big Pharma and everything, because then they would lose money. And they need their money. Because, you know, let's face it, the Big Pharma and all those people, they are superior people. The rich people are superior people. This is the new normal. That was actually the older normal. It's that we've been living in the abnormal, you see, from World War II, when Europe and countries like Britain and America, you know, started establishing human rights and workers' rights and women's rights and anti-racism and all this type of stuff. It's like that was actually abnormal, because, you know, the real normal is when people know their place. And, you know, Britain is I think Britain is probably the most, I think it's populated with the most tolerant and well-educated, well-trained populace out of all the Western populations, because we had centuries of knowing our place, you see, you know, and bowing down to our superiors. And we understand that, yes, our superiors do have to be above the law, and the lords of the superior people are, of course, Zionists. You know, Netanyahu as chosen leader of God's chosen people. I mean, he is literally, you know, representing God, isn't he? You know, he is the Lord of earth. And so, obviously, you know, all the rich people are standing with him because he is the most superior people, and Zionists are the most superior people. And, of course, they're above the law, you see. I mean, a few centuries ago, we understood this. The British population thoroughly understood that, you know, rich people are superior and they are above the law. And, of course, Israel is entitled to violate the sovereignty of foreign countries and is allowed to ignore the directives of international law in any field that they so desire. And so, you know, if they want to, you know, go around assassinating people in other countries, of course they should be allowed to do that. You know, this Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, he was a dangerous person because he was a nuclear scientist in Iran. And we all understand that Iran is a dangerous country because, you know, it has the wrong type of Muslims. It doesn't have the kind of Muslims like, you know, the Saudi Arabia royal family that all stand with the Jews. Sorry, stand with the Zionists, you see, because, you know, obviously the Zionists, you can't just call the Zionists Jews, because, let's face it, most Jews are the wrong type of Jews, aren't they? You know, like this lady here, who, you know, she supports Corbyn, and she supports human rights, and she criticises Israel for what it's doing to Palestine, and she says bad things about Zionists, you see. And so, you know, she is the wrong type of Jew. And, you know, it has been a problem because it turns out that the wrong type of Jew are the majority of Jews in Britain, and actually in every country. The majority are actually like this lady, the wrong type of Jew. You know, Zionists are actually a minority. But of course they are, because they're superior. Otherwise they'd be common like the rest of us, common inferior people who are commonly infected with all kinds of coronaviruses, you know, like the common cold, for example. I mean, we are literally a disease, you know, to the degree that we're just spreading disease. And, you know, I mean, we have believed that we've had a right to just go around wherever we like, visiting our family, friends, going into hospitals, even though, you know, we've got a slight cold, or, you know, like not even getting tested to make sure that we might be carrying a cold and be asymptomatic and be spreading it to people. And then it could turn to flu and kill people, you know. And it's like, of course we've had to be retrained, you know, because this is the 21st century. And it's like, well, of course we do need to understand that, you know, when it comes to dealing with the coronavirus, of course we're going to have experimental vaccines. And of course the British Medical Authority isn't going to be able to give it a licence, because if they did, then they would be liable, you see, because they gave a licence to an experimental vaccine. So of course they won't be able to give it a licence, because then that would make them liable. So of course the vaccine has to be unlicensed. But of course, therefore, all the doctors and everything, and Bill Gates and Big Pharma and AstraZeneca, they need to be made non-liable because of the damages that it's going to inflict, because, you know, that is only to be expected. And we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic and understand that it's time to defeat the common cold. You know, as Boris Johnson said last year, be prepared to say goodbye to your loved ones. And especially with the coronavirus stuff, you know, lockdowns and destroying people's businesses and things. It's like it all had to happen because the banks had collapsed again. And, you know, we, the poor people, we, the common people, we have to shoulder that burden because, you know, it's like, look, take, for example, TEPCO. It's a little corporation. It's got a few nuclear power stations in Japan, you know, tiny, tiny island. And, you know, if you look at it from the satellite, Fukushima, it's just a tiny, tiny little place. There was 3 tiny, tiny nuclear melt-throughs that, all right, they're poisoning the Pacific Ocean and stuff. But, you see, people want to blame TEPCO. But that's because we were in the abnormal. When we understand the real normal, we understand that, look, you know, like a few hundred years ago in Britain, the royal children, if they were naughty or anything, of course they don't get a spanking. Instead, you know, a poor child from the commoners, the inferior people, they would have a poor child, like a whipping girl or a whipping boy, and that child would get beaten if the royal child did anything wrong. And, you know, it's about retraining through psychological reprogramming. You know, it's all for our own benefit, so that we understand that, look, when rich people and their corporations do big mess ups, you know, or cause damage to our planet, it isn't them who are responsible for it. It is we, the people, you see. We have to take the blame. Humanity has to take the blame for the things that the rich people do, you see, because that, apparently, that is the natural balance, you see, that we've all got to get our heads round with this new normal stuff, you see. So if rich people do something wrong, then we get punished for it. If rich people make the banks collapse, actually it's us that have to take the punishment for it. Because obviously, you know, we can't allow these rich people to be punished because obviously they are above the law. But unfortunately, in a lot of Europe, you know, there's some very unruly people, like in France, for example, and Iceland and Denmark, where people have just come out. I mean, this is France. This has been going on for days in France. Why? Because their government wants to bring in a law to prohibit people from photographing or filming the police. Okay? And it's like just days and days they've been out. You know, and you have a look in Denmark, for example, and it's like all these people, virtually the whole of Denmark, millions of people, surrounding Parliament for 9 days, banging pots and pans, you know, making a right old riot noise. Why? Why? Just because the government wants to round people up and force them to have experimental vaccines. And it's like, what? What? Here in Britain, it all got passed. The coronavirus bill. Not a murmur. Because the British people, like I say, very well trained, very tolerant. And our media, you see, it all comes down to our media. Because our media we are very fortunate in Britain that we don't have any media that aren't controlled by Zionists, you see. And the ones that, even the ones that aren't mainstream, a lot of them are actually controlled by Zionists. So we are very, very lucky. Our media don't raise the alert to people like they do in Denmark. You know, the media don't go around scaring the people, saying, oh, the government's going to come and force you to have these experimental vaccines. You know, our BBC doesn't do things like that. They just scare us about the things we need to be scared of, like coronavirus and the common cold and, you know, all these tests and everything that are rising every single day. And, you know, and obviously people in Britain, like I say, so tolerant. We understand that, look, if you've got cancer or any illness that isn't a coronavirus, then actually, no, you can't receive medical treatment, you see. Be prepared to say goodbye to your loved ones. Of course your business must close or you lose your job because, you know, coronavirus and the economy. And so, yeah, you know, we're prepared to say goodbye. Oh, our friends committed suicide. Our friends died of cancer because they couldn't get treatment. But, you know, we are prepared to accept that in Britain because we have a stiff upper lip, you see. We have a stiff upper lip, and that centuries of training before the abnormal came in, where we all thought we were equal and had human rights, centuries of training, it's embedded in our DNA, you see, by now. It just snaps into quick. Oh, yeah, we understand this, you know. And, all right, there's some silly people in Britain, like, you know, there's this petition, an urgent public inquiry into the UK 2019 postal vote. And, you know, I think about 160 odd people have signed it up to now. Okay. And it's like, it's just a handful of people in Britain. You know, there's a few thousand come out to demonstrate against masks and all that type of stuff. But really, it's a minority of people in Britain. The majority of British people, you know, we don't ask questions like that. And we are prepared to accept coincidences. You know, unlike this guy, Ricky Coxon, who's, you know, put all this data together. He's a data nerd, claiming that it isn't a coincidence, you see. It isn't a coincidence that the Tories privatised Britain's post office in the last few years, and that the Tories run and manage and control and count the postal vote, and it's all done by a private firm that has Tory direct connections to Tories, you know, and that, oh, the postal vote suddenly doubles in 2019 when there's no pandemic, and you know, he's asking, is it really a coincidence that, you know, that postal vote did give the Tories a landslide victory that then allows them to take full control of Parliament and get their hard Brexit done? I mean, the majority of people understand, of course, all of that is just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence that the Tories privatise the post office and they run, count, manage the postal vote and it doubles and it gives them a landslide win. Of course, that is all a coincidence, you know. But we understand that that's the way things work. Coincidences happen when you're with God's chosen people. You know, when you're with the most superior people, everything works in your favour, you see. And obviously for people like this man, Crispin Odey, you know, and lots of other friends of Tories like him, very rich people who've been betting against Britain's economy. So if there's a hard Brexit, he's going to make billions of pounds. And there's loads of people all over the world have been doing the same as him, you know. So of course we have to have a hard Brexit. Of course we have to have a hard Brexit. And if Boris Johnson hadn't managed to win by a landslide, then we probably wouldn't be having a hard Brexit, and he would have lost £300 million. And, you know, the British people, like I say, we are well trained. We understand that. No, it's us that has to lose the billions of pounds because we're inferior people. We're inferior. the common people. We are actually the wrong type of people, you see. We're the wrong type. He's the right type of people. You see what I mean? It's like it's all starting to click in, isn't it? And obviously, it's like when you look at it, when you think about Brexit, okay, it is going to cause a few problems because, you know, people that have signed this petition, for example, or people like Ricky Coxon here, or, you know, these British people who've been, you know, protesting about masks and things, they are probably going to riot, aren't they? So obviously we're going to need martial law, aren't we? You know, and how can really they establish the new old normal again? Okay, how can they re-establish the old normal as a new normal unless they have martial law, you see, and turn Britain into Palestine? Because we do have to be Palestine, don't we? Because it's like, you know, you look at Israel and Palestine, it's like, well, London's going to be like Israel, isn't it? Central London, where all the rich people live, and then the rest of the country, especially the northern areas of Britain, are going to be like Palestine, aren't they? So there's going to be a lot of people protesting because, you know, and so they're going to have to become surrounded by military checkpoints, aren't they? You know, like I say, this idea of just being able to travel about freely, it's like, no, go away. You know, you're going to have a vaccination passport, and of course, you're going to have your freedom of movement severely restricted. Protests are going to be banned. You know, we're not going to have any of this kind of trouble because there's going to be curfews. And, you know, what is absolutely fantastic, you know, this is how smart these people are. That, you know, they've even prepared for it all with this, what people are calling the Kill Bill. You know, new rules for MI5 and police to authorise crimes. And, I mean, there is not one country in Europe, not one population in Europe, I don't think, and even America, would have tolerated this like the British people. And like I say, it is purely down to our centuries of genetic programming, life experience under the old normal, where we bow down to our superiors. Our stiff upper lip, you see, this is evidence of our stiff upper lip, that the British people, we just quietly accept that all these agencies, MI5, the police, immigration, revenue and customs, military forces, the Ministry of Justice, Competition and Markets Authority, Environment Agency, Financial Conduct Authority, Food Standards Agency, Gambling Commission and Medicines and Healthcare Regulation Authority all need powers, and they've all been granted these powers, to kidnap, torture, rape and kill any British citizen that is causing them a problem, you know, that is questioning them, maybe might be, you know, like these people questioning the vaccines. They're a threat to the corporate economy, aren't they? They're a threat to rich people who've now invested all their money in these vaccines. So, of course, people have to have them. And, you know, so that means, you know, people like Mike Yeadon, any doctors, like thinking, oh, I think he's right, and I'm going to speak out about these vaccines now because they're dangerous and blah, blah, blah. Then, you know, that means that the Medicines and Healthcare Regulation Authority, they can hire a secret agent, a covert agent, to go and commit secret crimes against that person, can't they? You know, like, for example, kidnap their children and then torture the children until the person takes back everything that they've said or just shuts their mouth. Because, you know, children obviously aren't exempt in this bill. You know, there's no special clause to say that these crimes, that they can't commit these crimes against children. And, I mean, Boris Johnson says that it's all right because we've got human rights to protect us, you see. But, obviously, in martial law, human rights are suspended. So, it is just going to be fantastic, isn't it? for them to have full control, and we the people, we know that we can trust our government because we trust the plan, don't we? We trust the plan, you know. And you know, there's been a lot of criticism. There's been a lot of criticism about QAnon and all this type of stuff. I mean, all right, they are wrong about some things, aren't they? You know, COVID-19 84 and claiming that masks are unhealthy, and you know, it's a scamdemic, it's a plandemic, it's Agenda 21 and all this type of stuff, right? Yeah, we know that they've got that wrong, but some things they have got right, haven't they? You know, on most things they are right. They are absolutely right. That yes, we do need to trust the plan, and you know, Dr. Fauci is very likely the love child of Mother Teresa. You know, these are all revelations now that are being delivered to us by QAnon. And, you know, we do have to take them seriously, because then that does explain, you know, how Dr. Fauci is where he is, because obviously he's blessed by God, isn't he? And he is an ultra special person, like Trump and Epstein, you know. And then you know, we find out that Jeffrey Epstein, you know, there's this Middle Eastern person, you know, written a new book. Oh, Jeffrey Epstein, he was working for Mossad and CIA, and he was getting intelligence and blackmailing politicians, and you know, that's how they've took control of everything. I mean, of course, it is a wild conspiracy theory, isn't it? You know, because we all know that Donald Trump threw Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago after, you know, there was some issue with somebody's child, and Trump threw him out, you know. And all right, he'd been his friend for years and years, and he was a friend of the Clintons. But obviously Trump didn't know when he was flying on the Lolita Express that all those young girls were actually trafficked children. You know, he didn't even know that. So, and QAnon, they understand, you know, Trump is equivalent of Jesus, you see, worshipping at the feet of the Lord God, God's chosen leader, Netanyahu. And it's like, you know, we've got people like this, for example. We've got Abby Martin, if I can find the video. Abby Martin here. I mean, she is a typical example of the wrong type of American citizen, isn't she? Let's face it. You know, here she is. Look, she was going to give a speech, do a speech at Georgia University that she'd been invited to give this lecture speech to, okay? And before she did the speech, she was asked to sign a declaration that she supports Israel and she doesn't support boycotting Israel, you know, by refusing to buy Israeli goods and stuff. Right. So, you know, rather than just sign it and, you know, bow down to Netanyahu and Israel and the Zionists, she refused. Oh, no, I'm not signing that. And then next minute, she's suing Georgia. She's suing Georgia. You see, she's saying, oh, I'm an American citizen, and, you know, American people shouldn't be having to swear a declaration for Israel and Zionists before we're allowed to speak at our universities and stuff like this. And it's like, look, Abby Martin, please, she should just accept that, look, bow down to Mr. Netanyahu, because the Zionists are now ruling the world, and this is the new normal. And everybody just has to accept it, you know. But oh no. People like Abby Martin, they can't just accept that Netanyahu is the equivalent of God, you know. And what it is that people just are failing to appreciate now exactly what has been done for us, you know, with the how these Zionists have actually helped us. Because let's face it, with a democracy, there's a choice, isn't there? And you've got to choose, oh, shall we vote the left wing, or shall we vote the right wing, or shall we go green, and looking at all the politicians. But, you know, when Zionists take over your country, when all the rich people become Zionists and we accept our place, then, you know, all the politicians are actually Zionists, aren't they? You know, we've got Boris Johnson, who is a passionate Zionist, and, you know, we had David Cameron that laid all the groundwork for, you know, Brexit and everything. He declared himself a Zionist as well. And, you know, even Britain First, far right, has ties with the Zionist movement. Do you know what I mean? It's like, obviously, because the wrong type of Jew, the wrong type of people, the wrong type of Muslim, the wrong type of Christian. You know, the majority of Christians in Britain, like the majority of Jews, we're the wrong type of Christian. The majority of Muslims, we're the wrong type of Muslim, because we don't worship Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabian rich people who stand with Netanyahu, you see. Or we don't worship evangelical kind of stuff who stand with Netanyahu. So we're the wrong type of Christians, the wrong type of Muslims, the wrong type of Jews. And, you know, that is why the BDS are so the BOD are so fantastic, the British Board of Deputies for Jews in Britain. All right, they only represent a minority of Jews in Britain. But, you know, that's what makes them elite, you see. That's what makes them superior, because obviously if they weren't a minority, then they'd be a majority, and then they'd be the common people infected with coronavirus and, you know, being the wrong type of Jew. And, you know, what is absolutely amazing, and really they have not been given the full praise and recognition that they actually deserve, is they've actually managed to get socialism kicked out of the Labour Party. Now, can you imagine a few years ago, you know, like 10, 20 years ago, somebody saying, oh, we're going to kick socialism out of the Labour Party? You would have just laughed in the face. But the British Board of Deputies of British Jews have managed to do it. They've actually managed to kick socialism out of the Labour Party. And, of course, with the help of the Tories getting their landslide win, you know, that meant the Labour Party could point the finger at Jeremy Corbyn because he's the wrong type of politician, supporting the wrong type of Jew, the wrong type of Christian, the wrong type of Muslim, the wrong type of socialist. You know, just, he supports the wrong type of people, let's face it. The man had to go. And with him losing by a landslide to Boris Johnson, then obviously in comes Keir Starmer, you see, a Zionist. He takes over the Labour Party. And, I mean, isn't it fantastic? It is just totally fantastic. That when you look at it, you know, I do support Zionism, he said. Okay. I support Zionism without qualification. Okay. And it's like, so an amazing thing has happened here in Britain, hasn't it? Because we no longer are burdened with that responsibility of choice, are we? Because it doesn't matter who we vote for, they're all Zionists, you see? So even if we lose, we've won. Everybody's a winner. It's like Donald Trump says, we just win, win, win. And even our punishments are a win because, you know, we are quite stupid people. Let's face it. We are stupid people. Because, you know, like, for example, let's just have a look at this now. architects and engineers, they've been banging on about 9/11 now for how long, you know, saying it was an inside job, you know, the buildings were pre-wired and all that type of stuff. It's like, how long are they going to be going on about this stuff? Okay, that it was an inside job and all that type of stuff. So, you know, like, they've just done this study. Apparently they paid $300,000 to get this study done, and apparently it's proven conclusively that the buildings were pre-wired, and especially building 7, and that the same applies to the Twin Towers. Okay, and you know, they're claiming that this building went down, building 7, by controlled demolition, and that the same study of physics also applies to the Twin Towers. Okay, but I mean, look, anybody can see as that building is falling down, right, that is not a controlled demolition. Anybody that's looking at that can realise instantly office fires, isn't it? You know, it's like the architects and engineers, they're expecting people to believe that Zionists control all the media, and that all the media would just lie, and that they've got control of intelligence, that they've got control of politicians, you know, through people like Jeffrey Epstein and all this type of stuff. You know, that because they've got all the secrets about politicians, that they just got everybody to lie for them and say, oh yes, it was brought down by office fires, and the Twin Towers fell, you know, turned into columns of dust and collapsed in their own footprint because of thermite and pre-planted explosives and everything, and that means it was all an inside job because it all had to be planted, and it was all done by Zionists. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that is basically what they're saying. When anybody can see, you can, you know, look, I'll play it again. You can see it with your own eyes that that building obviously has come down by office fires. Okay? And really, it just shows how stupid the common people are, even if they're an architect, an engineer, a pilot, a firefighter, are very stupid people. And that's why we do need to be controlled, you know. Because we don't know what is good for us, you see. We don't understand what is good for us. You know, most people in Britain, a lot of people now, in fact, the majority no longer want Brexit. Well, they definitely don't want a hard Brexit because they're scared of martial law. But why should we be scared of martial law? Why should we be scared of, you know, having no food or medicines and stuff like that? Because that's the way we lived 100 years ago. It's like, you know, we need to start understanding that, look, when you're an inferior person, you know your place, okay, then life gets much easier. When you allow Zionists to rule your country, then everything's much easier. You know, you don't really have to make a choice. It doesn't matter if you vote Labour or if you vote Tory or if you vote Britain First, you know, probably even the Green Party, because at the end of the day, you are actually still voting for a Zionist. You know, it's like you just can't lose. And we don't have to think, you see. We can become like North Korea. We can become like North Korea and worship our dear leader. And, you know, even QAnon here, all right, they're going on COVID-19 84 and all this type of stuff and depopulation and blah, blah, blah. But even here, they are actually doing a favour for the Zionists, aren't they? Because, you know, the people who don't follow QAnon and don't worship Trump and don't worship Zionism or evangelicals and stuff like QAnon does and all that type of stuff. But, you know, because QAnon are saying that COVID-19 is a scamdemic and thing, it helps the media you see, because then they can say, oh, well, all the people that are speaking out against vaccines, you know, people like Dr. Mike Eden, they're part of QAnon, you see. So the more the media ridicules QAnon, and, you know, the more they say, oh, it's a lie, that Dr. Anthony Fauci isn't Theresa May's love child, okay, and they just make it all to be a lie, you see, then they can say that people like Dr. Mike Eden are actually liars as well, you see, and that actually he's like QAnon. You know, look, they've even got a Q there on top of the talk radio, a big Q to show, you see, he is probably QAnon is what they're trying to say. I mean, obviously he isn't, because, you know, he isn't that enlightened to understand the kind of evidence that QAnon does actually share. You know, like, for example, you know, King John and stuff like that, you know, that QAnon know all about. They know all the secrets, all the sealed indictments for the paedophiles, you see. He obviously doesn't understand any of that. But, you know, I mean, if there weren't any control, Britain would end up being like Denmark, wouldn't we? You know, we'd have been like days, you know, like the people of Iceland in, when was it, 2008? They all spent Christmas, they all surrounded Parliament and their MPs' houses, surgeries and what have you, like the whole country saying, no, we're not bailing out the bankers, you see, and actually got bankers arrested. I mean, it's abominable, it's unthinkable that that is what people did, you know. But we understand. We understand in Britain. Look, when Pompeo says anti-Zionism equates to anti-Semitism, we, the British people, understand that, you know. And that it is very important that Corbyn stays out of the Labour Party, that, yes, all right, Starmer wasn't successful in getting him, he only managed to get him suspended for a bit, but he's right to withhold the whip from Jeremy Corbyn, because it just means more power to the wrong type of people, the wrong type of Jews, the wrong type of Christians, the wrong type of Labour supporters. The wrong type of Labour supporters are now removed from the Labour Party. You see? And that is where we need to be. You know, we need to understand. We need to understand that, look, the only people that are allowed to commit crimes, who are free to commit crimes, because they're not crimes when Israel does it, you see. You know, we need to understand. People are now going on about, oh, there could be World War III with Iran, and, oh, you know, they're trying to start war with Iran, these Zionists. It's like, look, Iran is a dangerous country because they don't worship Zionists. You see, they're the wrong type of Muslims. We need to understand that. The only people who are allowed to have secret, illegal nuclear weapons are Zionist Israel, the Zionists, you see. They're allowed to have the secret nuclear weapons. But Iran isn't. They're allowed to help other countries, like South Africa, before Mandela came in. You know, when it was apartheid South Africa, when it was as it should be, you know, like with the superior people lording it over the inferior people. Then they could have secret nuclear weapons. But obviously when Nelson Mandela came and, you know, apartheid was going away and people were starting to say, oh, we've all got equal rights and you're being racist and stuff like that, then obviously then David Cameron had to go over with Dr. David Kelly, and they had to collude with America and Israel to get these nuclear weapons, these secret nuclear weapons, out of South Africa. because that would have been dangerous, you see. That would have been dangerous. Because then, you know, the wrong type of people would have been having the secret nuclear weapons. You know, the kind of people who think that everybody should be equal and have equal rights, and that nobody should be above the law. And it's like, you know, we can understand now how absolutely insane everything was going, can't we? And, you know, thank goodness that people like David Cameron and Mrs Thatcher and, you know, Boris Johnson are in the world. You know, Mike Pompeo, they're all in the world to help us understand that the right way to go, you see. So, you know, what can I say except celebrate, people. You know, we need to start celebrating the future of Britain now. Britain, we are, yes, we the people are going to be, you know, under martial law and what have you, queuing up for our rations. But the rich people, it's going to be fantastic, because Britain is going to become a tax haven, isn't it? And London is going to become a fantastic place, you know, like Israel in Palestine, isn't it? It's like, until they manage to turn everywhere into their territories, you know, like take our homes and stuff like that, even demolish our homes if they want to. It's like, because Britain is going to become Singapore on the Thames. And, you know, a commitment to sweeping tax cuts for corporations and rich people, tax wars as a fiscal weapon, tax measures such as accelerated capital allowances to attract mobile investments to UK, comprehensive deregulation, removal of social and environmental protections, weak or non-existent compliance with international money laundering, you know, golden visas for rich people, and increasing, you know, allowing wealthy non-British citizens to live here, and increasing exposure to oligarchs and corrupt illicit financial flows. I mean, these are all basically, you know, removing those tight constraints that the abnormal that we were living in had placed on rich people. You know what I mean? And it's like, especially this, removal of social and environmental protections. It's like, yeah, of course, you know, if people start complaining or creating a force because they're worried about the environment, that some corporation is damaging the environment, well, the Environment Agency can hire a secret agent to go and kidnap, torture, rape and kill that person, or, you know, blackmail them by, you know, threatening to do it to the children or something. Do you see, you know, when you understand how it all works, you know, what else can we do? You know, sane people will trust the plan, won't we?